Three different men, three different eras, one cursed story. Richard Matheson's novel, I Am Legend, is often called a masterpiece of science fiction. Yet, for over 50 years, Hollywood has struggled to adapt it without losing its soul. It seems there is a curse upon this book. No single movie can get it entirely right. The first attempt in 1964 had the courage to keep the original ending, but lacked the budget to convince us. The later version with Will Smith had the blockbuster spectacle, but faltered at the finish line. But the most fascinating victim of this curse is the 1971 cult classic, The Omega Man. It had the budget, it had the biggest star on the planet, and it is, by all accounts, a very entertaining film. Yet, to make it work for the 1970s, the filmmakers felt compelled to twist the narrative inside out. Welcome back to Golden Flicker. In this video, we will explore how the Omega Man managed to empty Los Angeles without massive sets, how it broke social barriers with a groundbreaking romance, and why it ultimately chose to turn a story about a monster into a shrine for a savior. If you went to the cinema in the early 1970s, there is a good chance you would see Charlton Heston presiding over the end of the world. Between 1968 and 1973, Heston inadvertently formed what we might call an apocalypse trilogy. First, he saw humanity enslaved in Planet of the Apes. Later, he would see us consumed in Soylent Green. But right in the middle of that cycle sits the Omega Man. In this 1971 adaptation, Heston plays Robert Neville, not just a survivor, but a symbol of science and order standing against a new dark age. The Omega Man is a remarkable time capsule. It captures the specific anxieties of its time, from the fear of biological warfare to the shadow of the Manson family cult. It is a film that feels undeniably cool, with its Ron Grainer score and 70s aesthetics. But it also serves as the perfect example of the I Am Legend curse. While the 1964 adaptation, The Last Man on Earth, remained faithful to the book's bleak philosophy that the hero is actually the villain in the eyes of the new society. The Omega Man took a different path. Hollywood in 1971 wasn't ready to cast Charlton Heston as a legend of fear. They needed him to be a hero. And that decision rippled through history, influencing how the story would be told for decades to come. So, let's step into the empty streets of Los Angeles and discover what makes the Omega Man such a brilliant yet cursed adaptation.
Sorry about that.
To understand the unique atmosphere of the Omega Man, we first have to look at the practical reality of its production. Creating a desolate metropolis is a standard task for modern cinema, but in October 1970, it required logistical brilliance rather than digital erasure. The producers couldn't afford to build massive city sets, nor could they shut down Los Angeles for weeks. The solution came from producer Walter Seltzer. He realized that the business district of downtown Los Angeles was naturally deserted on weekends. So the apocalypse was scheduled for Sunday mornings. The crew would arrive before sunrise, coordinating with the police to hold back the few early risers. They had a very narrow window to capture shots of Heston wandering a dead world before the city woke up and the illusion broke. For the dedicated film historian, the high-definition transfers of today reveal the seams of this guerrilla filmmaking. If you look closely at the background in certain scenes, you might spot the occasional moving vehicle, a pedestrian in the distance, or even the reflection of the camera crew in the polished black stone of a building. Far from ruining the experience, these details add a layer of texture to the film. It feels grounded because it is grounded. Neville's sanctuary, that memorable townhouse, was a facade constructed at the Warner Brothers Ranch in Burbank. It stood there for decades, a silent monument to the production, until it was finally demolished during redevelopment in the 20s. But visuals were only half of the equation. To truly sell the end of the world, they needed the perfect sound. Silence in cinema is risky. Too much of it and you lose the audience. So the filmmakers turned to Ron Grainer, the legendary Australian composer, best known for the iconic theme of Doctor Who. Grainer understood that this wasn't a traditional horror movie. It was a film about melancholy. Instead of heavy orchestral stabs to scare us, Grainer used a haunting mix of Baroque melodies, jazz fusion, and early synthesizers. He utilized an instrument called the water chime to create those eerie, echoing sounds that float through the empty city scenes. The result is a soundtrack that feels paradoxically groovy, yet incredibly lonely. It captures the essence of 1971 perfectly. When Heston is driving that convertible, listening to the 8-track tape, the music tells us that he isn't just surviving, he is trying to keep the vibe of the old world alive. It is a sonic landscape that separates the Omega Man from every other zombie movie. It doesn't sound like the apocalypse, it sounds like the last hangover on Earth. But while the music was cool, the threat was heating up. In Richard Matheson's novel, the enemies are vampires created by a bacterium. They are feral creatures driven by hunger. But for a film released in 1971, the screenwriters felt that gothic monsters were yesterday's news. The real fear of the era was something else entirely. The script transformed the plague into the result of biological warfare, reflecting the deep-seated Cold War anxieties of the time. Consequently, the victims were not the undead, but a group of albino mutants who band together in a rejection of modern society called the family. When watching The Omega Man, you might feel that the family looks disturbingly familiar. That is no accident. They are a direct reflection of the Manson family, which was dominating headlines exactly when the film was being produced. The cult-like devotion and the aggressive rejection of the old world were deliberate cultural mirrors. But what makes this adaptation particularly interesting is that the family is treated with a surprising amount of humanity. Unlike the mindless zombies of later apocalypse films, these antagonists are intelligent and articulate. They have a philosophy. They view Neville not just as food, but as a relic of the technological arrogance that destroyed the world. Throughout the film, the leader Matthias engages Neville in debate, challenging us to question who is the real monster here? The mutants trying to build a new world, or the heavily armed man clinging to the old one? This ambiguity is actually the ghost of the book's original twist haunting the script, a fleeting admission that Neville might be the legend of fear before the film remembers he is the hero. Wait, check the time.
The sun is getting low, the shadows are getting long, and the family is waking up. We need to get indoors. Quickly, before the lights go out, hit that like button and subscribe to Golden Flicker. It's the only way to help us fortify this channel against the algorithm and survive until the next video. Safe? Good. Now, while we are secure, tell us in the comments, which post-apocalyptic world should we scavenge next?
Okay, the doors are locked. Let's get back to the movie. This conflict between the old world and the new tribe reaches its peak in one of the film's most ironic scenes. There is a moment where Neville visits an empty movie theatre to watch the documentary Woodstock. He sits there alone, reciting the dialogue by heart, desperate to reconnect with a world of peace, love, and music. The irony is staggering. Here we have Charlton Heston, the symbol of conservative Hollywood authority, longing for the peak of hippie counterculture. Meanwhile, outside the theatre, a distorted, violent version of that same counterculture, the family, is trying to kill him. It is a brilliant meta-commentary. The movie suggests that the idealism of the 60s didn't die, but it mutated. Neville is the last remnant of the establishment, fighting against a youth culture that has gone tragically wrong. This layer of social satire elevates the film from a simple shooter to a fascinating study of the generational divide of the early 70s. This complexity extended to the film's casting. The Omega Man broke significant ground by featuring an interracial romance between Neville and Lisa, played by the formidable Rosalind Cash. In 1971, this was a bold statement. The film argues that in the face of extinction, our old prejudices become absurdly obsolete. There is a delightful backstage anecdote regarding their chemistry. Rosalind Cash, who was essentially launching her film career opposite one of Hollywood's biggest titans, admitted she was nervous about the love scenes. She famously joked to Heston that it felt spooky to screw Moses, referencing his role in the Ten Commandments. Heston, the professional that he was, reportedly loved her candor. However, there is a layer of tragedy to Lisa's character that was unfortunately left on the cutting room floor. There was a deleted scene where Lisa visits a crypt and encounters a mutant mother mourning her dead child. In that moment, Lisa realizes the horror of bringing a baby into this cursed world, that any child she bears might suffer the same fate. It was a profound moment that added immense weight to her character arc, but it was removed, perhaps to keep the film's pace focused on the action. And this brings us to the core of the I Am Legend curse. It seems Hollywood struggles to reconcile the book's message with the image of its leading men. The novel ends with a twist. The hero realizes that he is the legendary monster terrorizing the new society. The 1964 film, The Last Man on Earth, had the courage to keep this ending faithful. Vincent Price's character dies knowing he is a relic of fear. But the film suffered from a low budget and was largely overlooked at the time. Decades later, in 2007, Will Smith's I Am Legend actually filmed a faithful ending where the hero survives by realizing his mistake. But when test audiences saw it, they rejected the idea of their hero losing the moral high ground. The studio reshot the ending to have him die a hero's death. The Omega Man sat squarely in the middle of this dilemma. In 1971, you simply did not cast Charlton Heston to be the villain of his own movie. The star system demanded a savior. And so, the film pivots. Instead of a realization of guilt, we get a sacrifice for salvation. Which leads us to one of the most memorable images in sci-fi history. This is the golden flicker moment. As Robert Neville succumbs to his wounds in the fountain, he doesn't just fall, He assumes a pose that is unmistakable. He dies with his arms spread wide in a clear cruciform posture. Before he dies, he hands over the bottle of his own blood, the serum that will cure humanity. The symbolism is heavy, but effective. The actor who once parted the Red Sea as Moses is now visually linked to Jesus. He is literally giving his blood to wash away the sins of the world. Remarkably, this specific pose wasn't in the script. Heston later revealed that he had simply stretched his arms out in the harness during the take, and the director, Boris Sagal, recognized the power of the image immediately. In the book, the protagonist dies a monster. In The Omega Man, Heston dies a messiah. It completely inverts the meaning of the story, but it cemented Heston's legacy as the ultimate protector of mankind. Do you agree this is the golden flicker moment? The Omega Man may be a cursed adaptation if you are a purist for the book, but as a piece of cinema, it is a triumph of style, atmosphere, and star power. It captured the loneliness of the 70s like no other film, and it proved that sometimes Hollywood's changes, intentional or improvised, can create their own kind of legend. We have now covered the entire Apocalypse trilogy here on the channel, so I leave you with a final choice. If you were in Neville's shoes, would you fight to restore the old world with the Cure, or would you embrace the new age and join the family? Let us know where your loyalties lie in the comments. If you discovered something new today, illuminate our day by clicking like and subscribing to Golden Flicker, so you never miss a story from the annals of cinema history.